Hello, and welcome to another World of UX podcast. This is your host, Darren Hood. Thanks for taking the time to join us today, and welcome to all of you who are joining us for the first time. We're going to do something I haven't done before this week, and we are going to share some additional thoughts based on what we covered 2 weeks ago. We're going to go back to the topic of say no to Kool-aid. And after that episode aired, had some other always conversations, different types of experiences, different conversations, different challenges, different happenings on social media. And it just sort of stirred that thought up again. And just by way of quick recap, let me remind you what we talked about during the initial Say No to Kool-aid session. We talked about how it's not just about portfolios. That's big Kool-aid thing that's happening a lot today. We talked about folks who believe that UX just became important over the last 10 years. Being void of knowledge of UX history actually opens people up. It makes them more susceptible to a lot of Kool-aid oriented operations today. A lot of people that feel that what a company believes about UX dictates the cadence at which we're supposed to operate. No, companies don't dictate what UX is. UX is what it is, and companies get on the bandwagon, or they don't, and many of them don't, and they sort of create their own picture of UX, if you will, which is not really UX, and it just muddies the waters for everybody. We talked about how that somebody suggested that UX research, the researchers start taking the main reins when it comes to UX efforts. Maybe that's redundant, main reins, that the research people control everything. And it's funny because the person who said that actually has been around for a very long time and knows the history of UX, but still decided to do something that really is very contradictory. And I'm not going to get back into that today, but we'll just stop there. That's one of the things they suggested, but that's very Kool-aid oriented, because there was a time, I will say this, there was a time when everybody in UX did all the things. There were no specializations prior to 2011, 2012, roundabout in there or so. So what do you mean let the researchers control it? We used to, there was no distinction. There was no separation between the researcher and the designer, because that one person was one and the same. We talked about how that somebody said ADP List has a lot of great mentors, which is really interesting. And I won't get into the details again, but it's funny that they said that, because ADP List was started by people that did not have a history in UX, a long history. And if the mentors, and I know some great mentors in ADP, I'm going to mention that again. I know some people that are top-notch folks that are working with ADP and mentoring people, but ADP is actually using those people to make a name for themselves. I'm flat out saying it again here and now. They're using those people to make a name for themselves, because the people in charge of ADP List, at least one, if not more of them, are actually trolls. They have trolled me. They have trolled other people. And if the mentors were so great across the board, which they're not, because ADP doesn't even follow their own guidelines. They violate them whenever they choose to do so. So the integrity is not even there. But if these people were so great, they wouldn't have people fighting against historical aspects of UX, fundamentals of UX, and they wouldn't be doing people's work for them and claiming to be mentors. So just some tidbits there. There was somebody who was interacting with me, and they tried to gaslight me on the spot. And they said, according to your definition of pure UX, and stop. Number one, they didn't even know. They didn't know me. They didn't know my track record. They didn't know my history. Redundant, very thin line between the two, but different. We'll mention them both. They didn't know my purpose. They weren't familiar with my content. And they surely didn't know what I meant when I said pure UX. And they were just trying to cast aspersions. And so pure UX means that we believe it the way that those who were pioneers of the discipline set things forth. That's what I learned. That's what everybody who is taught by me learns. And there's some people who are taught by me that don't listen. I came to the knowledge of that. That breaks my heart to see things like that. I got to say that today. But when people, the gaslighting, trying to say, according to your definition, then people said, yeah, Darren, according to your definition. Hey, I didn't pre-exist UX. So I embrace what I was taught and I share those things with other people. So no gaslighting. We can smell gaslighting a mile away. We're not taking that. So those were some of the main points. I'm not going to go over some of the closing points that I mentioned during that episode, but trying to give you a really quick kind of a recap, if you will, of what we covered during that first week where we talked about the initial piece of saying no to Kool-Aid and UX today. And again, for those of you who don't know what I mean by that, the concept of Kool-Aid is a metaphor that's referring to some people who, to their own detriment, some of them believe someone at face value. They didn't exercise critical thinking. They just followed a person straight into harm's way. And there were other people that were coerced into following those people into harm's way. But the key is, and where the Kool-Aid metaphor comes in, was that these people, many of them drank. It wasn't really Kool-Aid, but that's just what people metaphorically say, that they drink something that was like the equivalent of Kool-Aid and it killed them flat out. That's what happened. And so we liken people who take things at face value that are not accurate. They embrace principles that are not true. They're not trustworthy. They're not reliable, but people embrace it anyway. Those are the things that we're referring to when we say Kool-Aid. And so the things I just mentioned, that's what Kool-Aid is. And we got 5 more for you. This may come up again. You can almost think of this as a potpourri, but it's not. But we want to talk about 5 more aspects of Kool-Aid that are making their rounds in UX. And the funny thing about some of these is there's some viability to some of them. It's just that they veer off and become very Kool-Aid-ish in their operation. And so we want to present, again, 5 more things that we need to be aware of in UX today, things that we need to have our critical thinking hat on, as some people like to say. Good statement. We need to always, this is a discipline that revolves around critical thinking, yet we have a lot of people who practice it that don't engage in critical thinking at all. And then to make matters worse, when you try to convince them of the importance of critical thinking, they actually get hostile, which really shows, okay, they're just here for the check. Flat out, that's very raw, very transparent, very blatantly honest, that people are just here for a check. And when some people are in UX for the check, on one hand, hey, you heard there was nice pay over here, and in many cases it is, but that's changing a lot also. But if you're just here for the check, people are here for the wrong reasons, and those people will never stand up for UX and embrace it and represent it the way they're supposed to. So, ready for the 5? I'm going to use my sound effects today. Let us dive in, shall we? The first one that we're going to cover this week is design systems. Now, just upon hearing design systems, here's a quick emotional intelligence check for some folks. Some of you are going to hear the topics that I'm going to cover, and as soon as you hear it, someone's going to go, no. They're going to immediately get hostile, immediately start fussing, immediately start screaming, get angry and turn the podcast off and not hear what's said. That's called neuroticism. And we covered that during the sinister UX traits. There are too many neurotic people. Hear me out before you start screaming and yelling and drawing conclusions. It's always about don't judge a book by its cover. Same thing here. Let me share with you, because a lot of people are not going to be aware of what I'm about to share. So I'm just going to challenge you there. The concept of design systems is that you can have components. You can have certain aspects of the experience, whether it's a search interface or forms or navigation or whatever it is. You can have all of these different elements that factor into putting a design together. Think of it from an atomic perspective, if you will. You have molecules, you have atoms, you have all these little building blocks. And you bring these building blocks together. And when all the building blocks come together, you finally have a structure. You finally have substance. You have something you can interact with. You have something you can touch. That's the mindset behind design systems. The folks over at Figma refer to a design system as, and I quote, a single source of truth, good stuff, Single source of truth that reduces design redundancy and accelerates the development process. And that's where we're going to really a strong point that they mentioned there. I wanted to get into a couple design systems, but I won't. I think people will understand what it is I'm trying to illustrate here. And I think we're all on the same page. But no one understand, as I get ready to explain to you why this is a Kool-Aid oriented thing, there have been several instances, several things, several concepts that are accepted by many practitioners in UX that are really rebranded elements, rebranded practices, rebranded approaches. And is it wrong to rebrand something? Not necessarily. It's wrong to rebrand something when somebody rebrands it and acts like the thing that it was rebranded from didn't exist. Because that's Kool-Aid. That's one of the elements behind Kool-Aid is manipulation. And when you look at what design systems are doing, prior to design systems, and we still have what I'm about to mention, you had content management systems. And in a content management system, you had all the same elements that were in design systems. The way the navigation was structured, the way that the typography is set up, the way that the icons are set and which icons you're going to use, the way that certain things appear on the site. In the content management system, everything has already been set up, the entire structure of the experience and the way that different assets that feed into a design system or a content management system, those things are already in place to the point that the people who manage the site, whether it's an individual contributor or people on the UX team or the content management team, these people just log in to a content management system. This is back in 2007, 2008, 2012, and even today, there's still content management systems. They're not gone anywhere. But everything that's in a design system today was in a content management system yesterday. And so a lot of people who talk about design systems and act as if something new is happening and act as if they're changing the way that design is done. They're not. They're blowing smoke. They are selling people snake oil. They are creating senses of urgency that do not exist at all. It's being fabricated. Content management systems were the same way that we handle things. I mean, I can go back to the most rudimentary aspects of a content management system. There used to be a system, I can't remember the name of it, but Macromedia had a system that you could actually go in and anybody could go in and do web design, and all they had to do was go in and enter their text, and all the other aspects of the design were already taken care of for them. And they would go ahead. This didn't last long, and Macromedia sunsetted really quietly. I don't think it was a big hit, but it was still a thing. And people would go in as then Dreamweaver comes along, this came out after Dreamweaver, actually. I guess somebody was trying to simplify web design and it didn't really catch on. But you could do the same thing in Dreamweaver. You could set up templates, whether you're using Dreamweaver, I'm going to really go a blast in the past here. Dreamweaver, Microsoft Front Page, NetObjects Fusion, Hot Dog, you name it. Hot Metal Pro, whatever it is. And Hot Metal Pro is more of a coding thing. But you still had templates that everything in the design was already preset. And all you had to do was enter your content and the styles were managed for you. So these things, somebody was making decisions about a component. Somebody made a decision about the resolution. Somebody made a decision about how the logos were going to be placed. Somebody made a decision about everything, every atomic aspect of a design, and it was in the content management system. And all people did was evolve, and in some cases evolve the content management system, and in other cases, they really just, the content management system in some cases is more of a point of reference. and you sort of kind of don't really get involved at all, or it feeds back into a content management system. But my point is that it's Kool-Aid oriented if you think that this is new. You have entire teams now, not just 2 or 3 people maybe like you had before, and that was a lot for a content management system. Now you have whole slew of teams. You have all these people in some cases who are hired to sit and put this design system together. It never took that many people to do that in the past. And frankly, it doesn't take that many people to do it now. When I read that quote from Figma, one of the things about the design system that, again, makes it so Kool-Aid oriented is that a lot of people who were trying to fabricate their way into a UX role, many of them, hey, I'm the guy that comes along, tells the truth. You don't have to like it. You don't have to agree. But you're disavowing if you don't, because these things are true. I'm just citing the facts. A lot of people fabricated their way into UX roles through design systems because they have people believing that you need to pay them between $100,000 and $200,000 a year just to sit around and build components to make things easier. But this stuff was in the content management system before. So it's these things. All this Kool-Aid stuff I'm talking about, one day, somebody is going to wake up. Folks are already starting to wake up. That's why a lot of people got laid off. People are starting to wake up and realize we don't need all of this and we don't need all of that. We can do it from a lot simpler of a perspective than what somebody is proposing. So this is what we need to do today. We need to recognize that a design system is beneficiary, but the way that some people are trying to structure it and the sense of urgency that some people are attaching to it, and the way that they're trying to act like this is something new, all of those things are lies, and it's going to start coming out in the wash, and people are going to start paying the price for that. Design systems they contain too much Kool-Aid. Next topic. People are not going to like this one. Artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence. Oh my God. Do we have some people that are really starting to come out and tell the truth about artificial intelligence? Now, first and foremost, anytime something is hyped, we should beware. People hype things usually because they're making a penny off of it. Somebody's getting rich. And so when people are getting rich and they stand to get rich, they create a sense of urgency around it, which is an age-old sales tactic to make everybody think, oh, you got to have this, you got to have this, you got to have this. Oh, everything's going that way, everything's going that way, everything's going that way. Oh, we can't do anything. This is where the Kool-Aid comes in. We can't do anything without AI. Oh, everything's going to go the way of AI. Oh, I can't do my job without AI. People who know their stuff can still out UX AI. Please know and understand that. It's the people who never took the time to understand fundamentals, the people who are lazy, frankly, and don't want to learn how to do anything, the people who don't want to spend any time doing the work. These people are AI-aholics, if you will. They are addicted to AI. They're addicted to the potential. And you know what? We should be excited about the potential of AI. AI is going to be able to do great things, but the people who are behind the hype, they think it's more than just a tool. AI is a tool the same way everything else out there is a tool. The same way that you can take your URL, go to a website, submit it, and do an accessibility audit in seconds on a particular page. It's a tool. But even after you do that, and AI a lot of time is used to do that audit, you still need an actual human being with critical thinking and the ability to pivot, and more importantly, the ability to approach the work from an infinite science perspective instead of the limitations of a finite science perspective, which is the only thing that AI can do. So it is a tool. It is something that's going to bring a lot of color. It's going to be able to augment what we do. It can process, it can analyze data from from UX interviews in a fraction of the time, but a person still has to go back through there, and you can't speak to something expertly if something else is doing the work for you. So there are still going to be experts. There's still going to be the need for experts, and the people who have taken the time to become experts over the years, the only places, the only times we're going to be displaced is because somebody simply does not understand what's going on. And then they're going to be subject to this 85% error rate potential that AI has already been documented as manifesting. So don't drink the Kool-Aid of AI. Don't just embrace it and not be skeptical. Be skeptical, but be optimistic at the same time, and you'll be able to balance things out, and you'll have the critical thinking that you need to engage with AI from a sober perspective instead of being gullible. Being gullible and being naive never benefits the people who are connected from that perspective. So AI, again, is Kool-Aid. Number 3. We need to remember that education is always the foundation of mastery. Education is always going to be, we always need to learn something. In UX, we never stop learning. But topic number 3 in this Kool-Aid subject, this Kool-Aid revisitation, if you will, has to do with faux educational resources. Don't get confused. FAUX, faux. Every educational resource is not valid. Every educational resource cannot benefit you. A lot of these mindsets of, hey, at least it's a great start. No, it's not. There are a lot of educational resources. Again, there's hype tied to it. That's your first warning sign. Nobody's hyping up books, you'll notice. Nobody's hyping up universities. People are hyping up boot camps. They're hyping up some kind of anything that's related, remotely related to a boot camp, anything that's microwavable, if you will. Didn't get that out right. Let me say it again. Microwavable. Anything that's going to get you there in a fraction of the time is being hyped. And if it's being hyped, that means it's Kool-Aid oriented. Something is wrong. Something's left out. Somebody has forgotten to share something that's critical to getting things done the right way. So beware of educational resources that promise you jobs. Beware of any educational resources that try to discourage you from engaging you in critical thinking towards that resource. I mean, a lot of us have gone to university. We've gone the way of higher learning. And in those institutions, you are trained to question even what they're teaching you. It's funny that people go to boot camps, they go to the Google program, they go to all these resources, and they come out and they think that those resources can do no wrong. Isn't it funny that the people who go to the least credible educational resources are more likely to see the place that they went to for their education, quote unquote education, I had to air quote that one, that they see that as a can't miss scenario? The same people that promised you a job, the same people that barely scratched the surface on certain topics, but yet told you that you could master something in 3 to 6 months. There are a lot of faux educational resources out there, and they are all Kool-Aid oriented vehicles. They're selling you on something to make you to sort of not consider the fact that they might be wrong. Then they're milking you for anywhere from $8,000 to $25,000 in some cases. Even $3,500 is too much if it's wrong. $5 is too much if it's not a credible resource. So there are a lot of faux educational resources out there, and people need to question the engagement that they have, the commitment that they have. You should even question your education after you get it. You should still be questioning it to see whether or not was this the best way for me to have proceeded. There are people who have gone through, whether it's a university or whether it's a boot camp, go back and look and say, you know what? This program really was, I could have done better than this. I've gone through, one of my degrees, I could have done better than that because there were some courses that they didn't offer in one degree program that I went through. So you have to question it, and then you're going to have to make a decision. What do I need to do to accentuate, to augment, to improve, to clean up, to triage who I am based on what was offered to me through that program. We have to be willing to say that about any educational experience that we have today. But know and understand there are faux educational resources out there, and they are vehicles of Kool-Aid, and we got to do something about it if we're going to do the right thing going forward. Let's move on to topic number 4. Topic number 4 for the second Kool-Aid segment today, and people are not going to like this. They're not going to like this, but we got to help some people overcome it. And a handful of people will overcome it, and a lot of other people are going to hate me for it. It just is what it is. But at one point in time in UX, going back to around 2011, 2012, that's when we have what we call the gold rush to UX. That's when the word was getting out about what UX was, how much you could make, and then a lot of false reports about UX went out that helped to actually inspire a lot of people to come this way. They thought the work was easy. They thought that anybody could do it, didn't take anything to transition to it. There were a lot of the retrofitting, I should say, was happening in a lot of organizations. People were being convinced that they should try UX, and they were coming from other departments and coming into UX. They didn't even have the personal makeup for it. They didn't have the temperament for it. They didn't have the patience for it, but they were coming into it anyway. And so that was back in 2011, 2012-ish. There have been, in my observation, there have been more than one gold rush scenarios, segments, if you will, periods. More than one type of gold rush, or more than one period of gold rush associated with a discipline. One of them, and this is where people are going to get upset with me, but if you're honest, you're going to know that what I'm saying here is true. There's a period of time, a gold rush period, where a lot of people in academia made their way into UX. They felt, oh, I can't do anything in academia. I can't get a job, or I'm not getting paid anything. And then they got wind of what people were making in UX. Somebody convinced them in droves that going into UX is the thing to do. I can make more money. Jobs are more plentiful. And people are they're going to be excited about me. And I'm more specifically looking at the Ph.D. folks that made it into UX and transitioned into UX. Here's the problem. Here's the Kool-Aid oriented. I'm specifically talking about not just the academia to UX people, but the Ph.D. to UX people. And before you get angry at me, please know and understand, I'm a doctoral candidate as we speak. I know the mindsets of people who are of the Ph.D. level. I know their psyches. I know what the Ph.D. persona is like. And there are certain personality traits that are applicable to the average doctoral individual that are part of what created a problem. Remember, you have to have a certain temperament to come into UX. You have to have a certain degree of patience. Your skin has to have a certain degree of thickness to thrive in UX. You cannot have a sense of entitlement in UX. You have to understand business to be in UX. When people come from academia, they don't understand business. Folks don't understand business when they come over here. When folks come over into UX from academia, where they go to do, they're used to doing research. Research is something PhDs excel at, but they excel at academic research. They don't excel at UX research. Neither do they know what UX research even is. So you have a lot of people, they come from academia into UX with a sense of entitlement. They want people to sort of kiss the ring, so to speak. There's a lot of PhDs like that. You don't have to like this, but you know it's true. They come over, and a lot of people, they see somebody that's a PhD and they worship us. They see somebody that's a PhD and they start just sort of drooling and fawning over that individual, especially if they went to a more prestigious institution and got a PhD. People just sort of roll out the red carpet, and that person has done absolutely nothing. Matter of fact, anybody coming into UX has to transition. I don't care where they're coming from. Visual designers have to transition in. Creative directors, art directors, people who have been just user interface designers. No matter where a person is coming from, sociologists are transitioning in, developers are transitioning in, people are transitioning in from all types of arenas, all types of specializations, all types of areas of expertise. And if you're not coming straight into UX from a UX mindset, you have to transition in to this discipline. And a lot of the academic folks do not. And they came in, and that sense of entitlement has led to people trying to separate research from design, because you know these people can't design, right? Remember, there were no specializations prior to about 2011. And oh my God, if the generalist starts to be in more demand again, all of these people that came in trying to separate design from research and trying to get everybody, like as I said earlier in that recap, they want research to lead the way. A lot of these PhDs want to lead the way because they want everybody to fawn after them. No, no, no. Get in line. You just showed up. You just got here. And you have to learn it just like everybody else. You have every right to be in UX. I welcome you to UX, but you got to get in line and you got to follow the rules. You don't get to come over here and do what these people are doing, very Kool-Aid oriented, trying to turn UX research into academic research. No, no, no. You can't do that. No, that's not how it works. You can't come over here, and because you could do a research project in academia and take 3 years to do it, and then think that you're going to come over here in the UX. You're not going to get three years to do it. You might get 3 months, tops. In some cases, you got to move really fast. You might have to get it done, find a way to get it done in 3 weeks. People coming in from academia don't know how to pivot. They're not trained to pivot. They don't have a mindset to pivot. If you're doing UX research, you have to pivot, and you have to pivot fast. And you have to bring value fast. And in academia, you could do research and present it, and everybody would embrace it, and they'd pat you on the back, and they'd run off, and they'd go and do whatever, go and try to raise some funds with regard to your research, things of that nature. Over here in UX, you could present the absolute best research results anybody has ever seen in life, and they will still turn around and do what they want to do and blow you off. Is your skin thick enough to handle that? Are you ready for the possibility of that happening? That's the reality of UX. We don't get heard a lot of the time. And a lot of people, they couldn't care less if you're a PhD. You say you're a PhD and you think people are supposed to drop their jaws and kiss the ring, and they're looking at you and they say, well, you're a PhD. Well, I'm CEO. What do you think of that? And then they just walk out with a CEO with no degrees, and they don't care. They just don't care. Are you ready for that? Again, you're welcome to the fight. You're welcome. Oh, and the fight. Oh my God. They're not even ready for that at all. And I've seen some PhDs, very violent, do not have the emotional intelligence. They have the intelligence quotient. They have the IQ. They don't have the EQ. So when it comes to actually doing, when it comes to actually progressing, when it comes to managing, they simply are not ready. So you do not automatically get to come from academia into UX and automatically fit in. That's not how it works. If you want to be successful, if you want to dwell over here, you got to do what was here before you got here. And you're going to have to be acclimated. You're going to have to be assimilated. And then over time, all of those disciplinary benefits that the PhD brings, and yes, the PhD brings a ton of benefits, but you're going to have to earn that. And we earn trust over here. You don't just slap your resume against somebody's forehead and you automatically get respect. That's not how it works. You got to earn it. Are you ready to earn it? Even though you went through all of that, you jumped through all of those hoops to do your dissertation. You went through all of the hazing. You went through all of the sleepless nights. You went through all of the biting off all the nails and pulling off the hair, figuratively speaking, just to come over here for somebody to tell you that they don't care who you are and what you think. That's the reality of doing UX work. So if you're ready for that, by all means. But the Kool-Aid associated with PhD to UX and academia to UX, oh no. They even have groups that are set up that are dedicated to that. And they're run by people who have yet to even transition into UX. They don't have a realistic mindset. Those things are laughable. I'm telling you. And again, nobody has to like what I'm saying, but it's true. That stuff is laughable. Nobody has to give you the time of day, and nobody owes you a thing. Just because you have a PhD, when I finish my doctoral degree, nobody owes me anything. I did that for me. I didn't do that for you, and nobody owes me anything. They don't owe me anything as a doctoral candidate, and they don't owe me anything when I'm a PhD. That's it. Maybe some respect here and there, but they owe you anything from a UX perspective? Oh, no. No, so let's drop that. That's all Kool-Aid. Ready for number 5? And this one's, people not going to like this one either. The last one that we're going to cover for today, and this, you see it all the time. And it's interesting. This didn't happen in 1995. It didn't happen in 2000. It didn't happen in 2005. It didn't happen in 2010. People weren't going around claiming this in 2015 and just started claiming it in around 2019 to 2020. This imposter syndrome thing. It's amazing how many people claim they have imposter syndrome. I have seen people hear a presentation about imposter syndrome and 10 to 15 seconds into the presentation are convinced that they have imposter syndrome. They know nothing about the history of imposter syndrome. They know nothing about who came up with it. They know nothing about the fact that it is not a clinical diagnosis. They know nothing about the fact that it is always self-diagnosed, which should be an indicator that, okay, this can't be right. Do you walk into a psychiatrist or a psychologist's office and diagnose yourself? No, you don't. It's really amazing that there's so many flaws. There's so many inaccuracies associated with imposter syndrome, let alone the history that it came about with a couple of folks, a couple of women who were not respected by their male peers. And instead of taking a stand for themselves, they came up with the concept of imposter syndrome. And really what they were talking about was self-doubt. Self-doubt is a real thing. Everybody experiences it. Do you remember riding a bicycle and the self-doubt you had? Do you remember the first time that you ever went to shoot a basketball or went bowling or went to play baseball or softball or engage in archery or any other thing? God, even cornhole, it doesn't matter. Anytime we tried something, anytime we were new to something, we had self-doubt, and then we worked to build confidence. Now, one of the concepts of imposter syndrome that people don't understand is that based on the quote unquote tenets of imposter syndrome, a person is not even eligible to claim imposter syndrome unless they have actually reached a point where they are actually validated and proven and have reached expert level of operation. So you can't even have imposter syndrome by their own tenets until you are actually accomplished. So you can't be in UX for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, even a year, and truly even be qualified to have imposter syndrome. And here's the other thing. A person can have self-doubt at any point in time. There's no time limit on self-doubt. You can have it at any point in time, especially if somebody's trying to gaslight you. And that's what happened to the people who came up with the concept of imposter syndrome. They were gaslit by some sexist counterparts, some sexist comrades. And again, instead of taking a stand, they came up with this thing, not knowing what it was going to create down the line. Now people use it as a crutch. And here's the funny thing about a lot of people that claim imposter syndrome. I've written a piece. You'll find it on my blog at uxuncensored.medium.com. And I talk about the history of imposter syndrome. And I've shared this blog post with people in the past. And some people will get hostile immediately. I do have imposter syndrome. Or you don't tell me how to feel. Nobody was telling anybody how to feel. And why are these people so determined to hold on to this thing? Why are these people so insistent on laying claim to a condition? Folks, that's not imposter syndrome. That's something completely different. And when you have a dependency on a condition, There are other names for that. There are other psychoses associated with that. But imposter syndrome isn't it. Remember, imposter syndrome is a concoction. It is not a diagnosable. It's not something that is clinical. It's not official. It's something somebody came up with just sitting over in a corner, if you will. It's really self-doubt. We all have it. It's part of being human. You will always have it, and you can always overcome it. And it's interesting that a lot of people who claim imposter syndrome, again, have absolutely no interest whatsoever in overcoming it. These folks are 5 elements of Kool-Aid, design systems. They already existed. AI still being proven. Faux educational resources. Every educational resource is not what it claims to be. They don't even follow educational tenets. You got to check these things. Automatically going from Ph.D. to UXD, not necessarily. You have to transition just like everybody else. You are not entitled to any rights or any position just because you're a Ph.D. That is not what your Ph.D. gave you. It gave you your paper. It gave you a certain status from an educational perspective. You are now a doctor of whatever your specialization is, but that's it. Nobody owes you a thing, and you don't get to come over here and then have a throne. All of a sudden, a throne materializes out of thin air. No, just a PhD. And so take the humility you learned as a PhD and put it to work, because you're going to need it. And lastly, imposter syndrome. It's really self-doubt. Call it what it is and get busy and overcome it. If you're not going to try to overcome it, it's not imposter syndrome. It's a crutch. It's an excuse. And you need to get over that. Get some EQ, get some emotional intelligence, and get over it. Folks, all of these things are Kool-Aid oriented, and the people who embrace them without embracing the truth associated with them are all endangering themselves, their teams, their users, and the discipline at large. We don't want to do that today, do we? I hope not. I hope not. Say no to Kool-Aid, folks. And that is all the time we have for today. So this is Darren Hood, the host of The World of UX, wishing everybody all the best. And until next time, happy UXing, everybody.